Welcome back to the Thinking Stack. We've gathered quite a bit of information, and now, well, we're here to dissect it, layer by layer, aiming for those core insights.
And today marks layer 7, doesn't it? The final part of our series, looking at Kashmir.
It does, and we're shifting gears significantly, moving away from, the deep diagnosis we've been doing.
Right, towards actionable solutions. That's the focus now, using the integrated thinking stack framework we've been applying.
Exactly. No more lengthy analysis today. Instead, we're looking squarely at 5 minimum viable prototypes, or MVPs.
And these are designed very specifically to target those critical feedback loops we identified in, well, the previous layers.
It's really about taking that step from just understanding the complexities to actively testing of potential solutions on the ground.
Precisely. Think of it like shipping testable ideas. Each one is a pilot, a small-scale test.
And they have a clear structure, right? A 90-day setup?
Yeah, 90 days to get things rolling, and then a very clear 6-month GOS stop metric. It's all about rapid testing, getting data quickly.
Data-driven decisions. We'll explore these 5 prototypes, the why behind them, the governance, the oversight.
And importantly, those fail-fast timelines and the funding side. Plus, as we stressed before, every single one has a clearly defined kill switch. No ambiguity there.
Okay, let's jump into the first one then. Prototype 1, trauma-informed schools.
Okay.
The pilot involves daily 15-minute breath work and peer support sessions in 20 high schools in the Valley. Which loop is this aiming at?
This one's aimed squarely at the security alienation feedback loop, the SA loop.
Right, and the logic.
Well, the thinking, based on the analysis, is it targets the cortisol levels, the stress hormone linked to trauma.
Okay. Elevated cortisol being a key factor that keeps that whole cycle going.
Exactly. It's seen as a kind of rate-limiting node in that SA loop, if you can address the physiological impact of trauma in students.
You might weaken that link between feeling insecure and then feeling alienated.
That's the hypothesis, yes.
Good.
The 90-day setup involves training 40 teachers, with Doctors Without Borders, MSF. They're seen as a neutral humanitarian group with real expertise here.
And the 6-month check, how do we know if it's working?
It's a specific metric. At least a 10% reduction in the PTSD-8 mean score in those schools compared to a control group, measurable.
Got it. And funding for this initial phase?
We're looking at 4 crore identified from UNICEF and the J&K Education Department. And importantly, it's tagged as INT neutral funding.
To minimize any perception of bias.
Correct. Keep it focused on the well-being aspect.
It makes sense. But what about potential downsides? What's the biggest worry?
The main concern flagged is parents possibly getting worried about, well, brainwashing in schools. It's a sensitive environment.
Understandable concern. How do you mitigate that?
2 key things. Strictly opt-in consent from parents for students to participate. It has to be voluntary.
Okay.
And live streaming the sessions. Full transparency so parents can actually see what's happening.
That sounds sensible. And an early sign of success, say within those first 90 days.
A really key indicator would be the teacher retention rate. If over 90% of the trained teachers stick with the program.
That suggests they believe in it. Real buy-in.
Exactly. It suggests emotional buy-in, which is crucial for something like this.
Okay, let's move to prototype 2. Checkpoint Dignity Protocol.
Right.
This one involves a not greet record procedure using body cams, planned for 2 zones in Srinagar. What loop does this tackle?
This goes right after what we call the humiliation hot switch.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, interactions at checkpoints, they can very easily trigger feelings of, humiliation, disrespect, and that can escalate things incredibly fast. It's a known flashpoint.
So the simple acts, knocking first, a basic greeting, recording it, the idea is that this diffuses that potential humiliation trigger.
That's the core hypothesis, yes. The 90-day setup involves a CRPF workshop, getting the personnel on board.
Training them on the new standard operating procedure.
Yes, and providing the body cams. Also, crucially, putting up Urdu posters explaining the protocol to locals so everyone knows what to expect.
Transparency again. And the 6-month metric. How do you judge success?
It's twofold here. First, a 50% drop in civilian complaints about checkpoint conduct in those zones.
Ambitious. And the second part?
A 25% increase in actionable intelligence tips coming from those same areas.
Interesting. The idea being that more respectful treatment might build trust.
Potentially, yes. Maybe people are more willing to share information if they feel respected.
And who's funding this one?
This is 1.2 crore allocated from the Ministry of Home Affairs HR cell, identified as IND national funding, reflect its link to internal security procedures.
Body cams, though, they bring their own issues. What's the main worry here? the backfire potential?
The big one is footage leaks. Leaked footage being used for propaganda, potentially making things worse, not better.
How do you guard against that?
Strong cloud encryption for all the footage is planned. And critically, a civilian board would have control over releasing any footage, not just the security forces.
Civilian oversight again. And an early success indicator, first 90 days.
You'd look for a noticeable drop in calls to the civilian complaints hotlines, specifically from those pilot zones. Maybe even by week 6. That would suggest an immediate impact.
Okay, prototype 3. Very different angle. Snow pond twins.
Yes, quite different.
Digging 50 microponds on both sides of the line of control. Shared flow sensors. What's the target loop?
This one directly tackles the hydrosaber loop, the H loop. It's all about water scarcity and how that can fuel conflict.
Water anxiety as a driver of tension.
Absolutely. Competition over water, fears about access. It's a major underlying issue in the region.
So the idea is shared management fosters cooperation. How does it work practically?
The core aim is to reduce that water fear, promote shared management, show mutual benefit. The setup is backed by a World Bank micro grant.
How much?
US $1 million. And a key part is a live data API, real-time data from those shared sensors accessible to both sides.
Making the resource visible and shared. What's the 6-month metric for this?
It's about the physical impact. Damping the spring flood peak by at least 15%. These ponds should help regulate flow, reducing flood risk downstream, benefiting everyone.
And the funding source reflects the nature of the project.
Yes, the World Bank climate window. It's identified as centrist global funding. Fits the cross-border environmental focus.
But this feels geopolitically tricky. What's the biggest anticipated hurdle?
Definitely the worst-case scenario involves the Pakistan military potentially blocking access to the sites on their side. That stops the project cold.
How do you mitigate that risk?
A tripartite escrow arrangement for the funds. Money gets released based on milestones. And a clear rule: if those shared sensors go offline suggesting tampering or blocking, the grants freeze.
A built-in safeguard. What's an early positive sign? First 3 months.
Just seeing those pond turbidity sensors reliably pinging data to both capitals daily with no signs of interference, that alone would be a big indicator of cooperation and access holding.
Okay, moving on. Prototype 4. Return plus co-op. Establishing a profit-sharing artisan e-commerce initiative involving 200 Pandit and Muslim families. Which loop are we trying to break here?
This hits the narrative loop, the N loop, which is all tangled up in, communal divisions, competing victim narratives, stuff that goes back decades.
So shared economic interest as a way to build bridges, maybe shift those narratives.
That's the core idea, shared benefit over shared grievance. The 90-day setup includes cluster housing, trying to get people interacting naturally.
Facilitating collaboration. And technology plays a role.
Yes, a Kashmir box blockchain ledger for totally transparent transactions and profit sharing. Everyone sees where the money goes.
How do you measure success for this one after 6 months?
2 key metrics: reaching a monthly revenue for the co-op of at least 25 lakhs. And, maybe even more important, 0 reported intercommunal incidents or major disputes within the cooperative itself.
That second one is crucial. Where's the funding from?
It's 6 crore, sourced from the meaty startup fund that supports the tech commerce side, and also a diaspora impact bond.
Tapping into the Kashmiri diaspora's interests.
Exactly. Those who have a stake in stability and prosperity back home.
But mixing communities with historical tensions and shared money? What's the main risk?
Profit disputes. The fear is that arguments over money could just reignite old biases and mistrust.
How do you prevent that?
That's where the tech comes in again. Smart contract automation on the blockchain for daily profit settlement, straight into individual wallets. Plus, the public ledger for total transparency. Reduces room for suspicion.
Makes sense. An early win, first 90 days.
Seeing that first, say, 10 lakh payout successfully hit the joint Pandit Muslim cooperative wallet. That proves the economic engine is working and the transparent system functions.
Right. Finally, the 5th prototype, AFSPA Sunset Sandbox.
Yes, this is a significant one.
Lifting the Armed Forces Special Powers Act immunity, but in a limited way. Hanwara Kupwara region for 18 months, overseen by a civilian board. Which loop?
This goes back to the security alienation loop again, the SA loop. But it tackles it from the angle of impunity.
The sense that security forces aren't held accountable.
Precisely. That feeling is a massive driver of alienation and deep resentment. This directly confronts that.
Temporarily lifting AFSPA in one area.
Right.
That sounds politically very sensitive. Mold.
It's framed as a controlled experiment, very carefully managed. The 90-day setup needs a formal Gazette notification, making it official for that region, and setting up a dedicated, well-publicized hotline for reporting any alleged abuses during that period, making it easy to report.
What are the make-or-break metrics here after, say, 6 months into the 18-month period?
The absolute key is that security incidents in that area must stay at or below the levels seen before AFSPA was lifted. No increase in violence.
That's the safety check. Is there an accountability metric, too?
Yes. Critically, there needs to be at least one successful conviction in a credible case of alleged abuse during the pilot. To show the mechanism actually works, that accountability is possible.
Who covers the costs for something this politically charged?
The legal and admin costs come from existing Government of India ex gratia funds. But, crucially, there's an independent audit planned by Amnesty International.
An INTHR organization providing oversight.
Yes, for impartial validation of the process and outcomes.
What's the nightmare scenario here? The big backfire.
A significant spike in attacks or security incidents in Handwar Kupwara. That would be hugely damaging politically and could destabilize things further.
And the safety net.
There's a hot rollback clause built in. If things demonstrably worsen security-wise, AFSPA can be immediately reinstated in that zone.
But you still learn from it.
Yes. Even if it's rolled back, all the data gathered during the pilot phase will still be published and analyzed. The learning isn't lost.
And an early sign that the accountability channel is open, first 90 days.
Simply having a magistrate in the region formally receive and register at least one genuine case of alleged abuse under the lifted AFSPA rules. That shows the system is accessible and being used. And, weaving through all 5 of these pilots are some common threads, some overarching governance principles.
Absolutely critical, like transparency, right? All the key performance indicators, the KPIs.
Streamed live to an open data portal, publicly accessible. And if that data stream goes down for more than, say, 20% of the time, funding gets paused. Real accountability.
And civilian oversight is baked in.
Non-negotiable. Each pilot gets a board. One local civic rep, one neutral international expert, one state rep. Balanced perspective.
And the ultimate red line, the hard stop.
Yes. If, tragically, civilian casualties in any pilot area go up by more than 10% compared to the control baseline, the pilot stops. Immediately. Full stop. The do no harm principle has to be paramount.
There's also protection against political misuse.
Absolutely. The no propaganda clause. If any pilot space or resource gets used for political rallies or campaigning, it triggers an independent audit right away. Keep it focused.
And the overall timeline reinforces that rapid learning idea.
Exactly. 90 days to design and prototype. Then real-time measurement. A public review at the 6-month mark. Then a clear decision. Scale it up if it works, or scrap it if it doesn't.
Fail fast, learn quickly.
That's the mantra for Layer 7.
So you've now heard a pretty concrete set of potential actions. We've moved from the abstract, from the analysis, into really tangible interventions.
Yeah, these 5 aren't meant to be silver bullets. They're designed to be relatively low ask to start, but very high data in return, prioritizing measurable results over just talk.
And that strong emphasis on governance, on transparency, those kill switches, it all points to a commitment to being adaptable, right? To learning from what actually happens.
It has to be that way. The core idea here really is prototype or perish. These complex, deep-rooted problems, maybe they don't get solved by endless debate. Maybe targeted, measurable actions, even small ones, are how you find the way forward.
It makes you think, doesn't it? What other problems, maybe problems that seem completely stuck, could benefit from this kind of approach? This rapid prototyping, this focus on data.
Where else are there rate-limiting nodes in complex systems? Nodes that maybe you could target with focused, measurable tests like these.
It's a different way of thinking about tackling big challenges, maybe less about grand plans and more about smart, iterative experiments.
Perhaps. Less about finding the perfect, all-encompassing answer up front, and more about an agile process of testing, learning, and adapting based on real evidence. It might just be a more effective path for some of these really tough issues.